I love that voice, you know, that you're talking about, Ben, and how you grapple with that. And to your point, Matt, maybe figuring out you're on the wrong ladder. I always remember, you know, probably around in and around the time we met, Ben, I was, you know, in a space like that. And I remember a good friend of mine gave me a piece of advice, and I still use it today, and I've shared it with others. Is he said, "Man, Brad, you know, would you talk to your best friend the way you're talking to yourself?" And of course, the answer was no, never. You would never. You would tell your best friend, you know what? I got you. I love you. You're worthy. I got your back, man. We're going to get through this together. We can do anything. Because that's how you would talk to your best friend. And damn it, that's how you should talk to yourself. And, you know, sometimes to your point, Ben, we let that voice just guide us and control us. And we talk to ourselves in the way that we wouldn't even talk to our worst enemy, which is just horrible. And I remember he said that to me one day, and it struck me. It's like, I got to start talking to myself the way I would talk to someone that I really care about. And I think that's such an important thing, to find that voice. And first off, acknowledge it, Ben. And then one of the things I want to kind of move on to with you a little bit is, if you, once you can come to grips with that and find out that you have this voice, and you acknowledge it, and you understand these stories that you're telling yourself about yourself, how do you really step into your fear? Because I've seen you do that a lot, whether it's, you know, I know you know, you're now out there speaking in front of 150 veterans on Memorial Day in a public space. And I know one time, you know, speaking in front of people was a fear for you. And it was something you were telling yourself, I can't do that. What do I have to share? How do you kind of step right through those fears, whether it's a fear of public speaking, or maybe it's a fear of, you know, trying to find a better job, or whatever it is, Ben? Because I think that's something I really admire about you, is you found a way to step into fear. Doesn't mean that it's not scary, but you found a way to kind of move forward and take a step even if it is scary. What would you give for advice around that?
Two mindsets. One of them was a Toastmaster speech that I entered into contest and made it to all the way to the district level here just recently. And it was essentially this question: fear or faith? When you woke up this morning, which one of those did you choose? The fear that, you know what, something bad's going to happen, so I need to be prepared for the shoe to drop? Or the faith that, like, man, there's a chance something's going to come into my life today, and it's going to be absolutely amazing. No idea what it is, but man, I'm just really excited and grateful that I get a chance to wake up and experience whatever moments the universe gives me. That story was baked in January 26, 2020. I woke up in a moment of faith, did my day, got the kids to daycare, got to work. And at 9 a.m., I got a phone call from the president to go to his office, and HR was in the room, and I essentially lost my job of 8 years. That moment afterwards, I had a hard time choosing faith again. And as most you would think you would be able to, it's a hard thing to reboot your life. And it's a hard moment that you don't prepare for until you get it, and then you just muscle through. And it wasn't till about 2 weeks later that I got my kids in the bus for the first time that I started choosing faith. And in this moment, the part of this was, I remember it was a snowy February day, cold, miserable, but it was the very first day I had ever got my kids in the bus because I had to be at work at a certain time. And I remember thinking as they walked up to the bus and thinking, like, what was that? I felt amazing. Like, that's all I want. Like, I don't care what happens in the future. I don't care what's happened in the past. Like, that moment was amazing. How do I get more of those? And that moment was the first time I chose faith, again, after losing my job. And then sequentially, having the faith that, like, you know what? I think this is an opportunity to dive into this mission, to dive into what could be. I had no idea Corona was coming because that was a month away yet, but I was still very optimistic. And then when Corona hit, I was like, okay, I hear you, faith or fear. At the time, I wasn't asking myself this question yet, though. But I was like, okay, you have a funny way of testing me here. Because actually, my word of the year that year was believe. And I was essentially believing that I've always had everything inside me, that I just needed to believe it myself. So I'm like, okay, we'll dive into believe again. Because that moment, I was like, you know what? Time to be a stay-at-home dad. My wife's a kindergarten teacher. Her world was chaos. Family world was chaos. I'll focus on this and do what I can to make some money on the side. Did that for a year. And ultimately getting through all of that just kept testing me, because I launched a coaching business at the end of that year. I had to choose faith again, that this works out. Then a year later, I decided to go full in and launch a speaking business, again, choosing faith. And the weird part about faith and fear is both you can't measure or see, but you always have a choice. You can't see fear, you can't see faith, but they fundamentally can shape what happens in your life. And the best part about faith, fear is an easy one, what happens really. Faith is one of these unique things that, like, even if you were to imagine the best week year that you could possibly imagine, if you chose faith every day and all the interactions that the universe is going to give you a bunch of moments, and if you make them a little bit better sequentially, your life will get better. It generally works out better than you can imagine. And having that extended version of faith, that it goes to a place like, you know what, I think if I choose faith, it's going to work out really good. But actually, if I consistently choose faith, it generally works out better than even I could dream up. Like whatever's in my mind, it's going to be 10x better if you choose faith. The other thing that is often like, how do you know which fears to follow through? Because often some are real and some are ones that are just your mind trying to keep you in the cave. I think of a compass with two needles. One with curiosity. The second is the fear. That purpose and passion and things you should do for the rest of your life that light you up, it could be a really overwhelming question because most people haven't been asked it. The moment you get asked to it, you think like, man, I feel like I should spontaneously combust. I don't think I have a purpose. Should I exist? Like, do I exist if I don't have one? And it really is this like paradox. It doesn't really have a good ways through it. But the best way that I've heard through it is as long as you are learning what you're curious about. So if you use curiosity as, if I'm curious about learning about ChatGPT, that's okay. You keep following your curiosity. And I'm a little bit drunk on curiosity. I follow it to a fault almost. I'm always learning about a bunch of random things. And it's when you have the marriage of curiosity and fear. So if you're learning about something like professional speaking, and you visualize and like one day I'm going to have to stand on a stage of 10,000 people, and that scares you. You know the thing that scares your mind to stay out of the cave or believe the cave the most. So using fear and curiosity as like, you know what, if I'm learning about something I'm curious and the fear mechanism is triggered, that's how you know it's going to change your life. May not be the first step that changes your life, but repeat that enough times and you will get there, because your mind is only triggered to stay in the cave when it's fearful of change. So if you learn something or you see something and your mind sees that you have to do a lot of growing, your mind doesn't like growing. It likes knowing exactly what you have every same day. It's pretty much the reptilian part that knows that everything of those lives is the exact same as it was yesterday. When you know that, part of the magic trick, when your fear is triggered and you get really heightened sense of insecurity about it, that's when you know you need to run towards it. Because generally, the more something scares you, proportionally, there's something amazing on the other side. So using those two is how I lead through it. And even back when I was talking to Bradley when we first met in that hotel lobby, my mind had this thing like, you know what? I think I could be a Tony Robbins someday. And that seems scary. And I'll never forget the day someone pointed out as I was telling him 10,000 people, and someone pointed out and like, you know, that's a stadium, right? Then I was like, no. But thank you for adding to the anxiety of what it would be like. Because I used to throw it out there like, I want to talk to 10,000 people. But I had no idea what kind of stadium or facility it would take to talk to 10,000 people. But that fuels what got me past Memorial Day. It got me through those feelings to be like, and on the other side of Memorial Day, it felt amazing knowing exactly I lived it. And I'm like, why would I rob myself of this? If anything, all morning, my mind was trying to stay in the cave. And I just set 150 people free of a story in their life, giving them tools to go out in their life and live it. And essentially my message was, if you didn't have someone come home on Memorial Day, it's up to you to create a life worthy of the sacrifice. Every day when you go out there, it's on you to create something worthy of a legacy leaving behind in his honor or her honor. It all comes back to the definition of living. But using that fear, we aren't taught as Americans or Canadians to dive into fear. We're taught that stay in the comfort zone, go through the routine, have your routine life. And that usually just ends in mediocrity, which goes back to full circle, why we need new definitions of living.